Didn't know I was standing 2 rows behind them when my brother announced, in front of every person who'd ever mattered to our family, that I had never been anything more than a convenient checkbook. What they also didn't know was that I had a screenshot on my phone, one conversation, 43 messages long, that was about to end his engagement before the appetizers were even served. Let me go back to the beginning. My name is Petra. I'm 32 years old. I work in payroll administration at a mid-sized logistics company in Mississauga, which is the kind of job that sounds boring at dinner parties but pays steadily and comes with benefits. And for most of my adult life, steady and reliable were the things people in my family called me when they wanted something, and responsible when they wanted to make it sound like a compliment. My younger brother, whose name I'll get to, had always been the one who filled a room. Not because he was particularly funny or particularly kind, but because he had a way of making people feel included that was really just a very polished version of making them feel necessary. I didn't understand that distinction until much later. For most of our lives, I just thought he was the charming one and I was the other one. He's 29, his name is Garrett, and for the last 4 years I had been quietly funding his life while he built what he called his future. It started the way these things always start, with a reason that made complete sense at the time. He'd just moved to Toronto from our hometown of Sudbury, which is a 6-hour drive north, and the first month's rent, plus last month's deposit on a 1-bedroom near Bloor West, had wiped him out before he even unpacked a box. I transferred him $1,200. I told him it wasn't a big deal. He said he'd pay me back when he got settled. I believed him. That was 4 years ago. After that came the car repair that he absolutely needed for a job he absolutely needed, the dental bill that wasn't covered by his work plan, the flight home at Christmas when he said he was short on cash. There was a year where I paid his phone bill for 6 consecutive months because he'd switched carriers, and the overlap had apparently created some billing nightmare that he could never fully explain, but that I kept covering anyway. There was the security deposit on his second apartment, the one he moved into when he started dating his fiancée. A woman I will call exactly what she is as fiancée, because she never once made me feel like I had a name she cared to remember. I had met her exactly 4 times before the engagement. Each time, she smiled at me with the specific warmth of someone performing warmth, asked polite questions she didn't listen to the answers of, and then turned back to my brother like I'd already left the room. My mother thought she was wonderful. My mother thought anyone who made Garrett happy was wonderful, which was a metric that had never once been applied to me. When Garrett called to tell me he was proposing, I was genuinely happy for him. That sounds hard to believe now, but I was. I thought maybe this was the thing that would settle him. I thought maybe she was better than those 4 interactions had suggested, that I'd caught her on bad days, or that nerves made her seem distant. 3 weeks after the engagement, he called to ask if I could cover the venue deposit. The venue was a restored heritage property in Niagara-on-the-Lake, one of those places with a wraparound veranda and a restored carriage house and a website that uses the word curated no fewer than 8 times. The deposit was $4,000. I asked him what his budget was. He said they were still figuring it out. I asked if his fiancée's family was contributing. He said it was complicated. I asked what complicated meant, and he said her parents were retired and on a fixed income, and it would just be easier if I could help bridge the gap for now. I said yes. I transferred the money the same evening. After the deposit came the catering consultation, which Garrett said he needed me to co-sign because his credit history had a gap from a period of freelancing that his bank was flagging. After the catering came the photographer, a woman with a beautiful portfolio and a contract that required 50% upfront, which Garrett assured me would come back out of the wedding gifts, which I should not have accepted as a financial plan, but did. By the time the florist was booked, I had put $31,000 into an event I hadn't been asked to have an opinion about once. I want to be honest about something. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't put my name on anything publicly. I wasn't doing it for recognition. I was doing it because Garrett was my brother, and because somewhere in the years between us growing up in a small house in Sudbury and him moving to the city and becoming someone I mostly knew through transfer confirmations on my banking app, I had convinced myself that being useful was the same as being loved. That distinction didn't fully land until a Tuesday night in late October. I was at a Winners in Oakville, of all places, looking at throw blankets I didn't need, when my phone buzzed with a message from Garrett in the family group chat, just me, him, and our mother. "Hey, so, just wanted to give you a heads up before you hear it somewhere else. We've decided to keep the wedding party tight, like immediate family of the couple only. So the guest list is changing a bit. I stared at the screen. Then he sent a follow-up. You're not on the updated list. It's nothing personal. Sienna just wants it to feel intimate. Hope you understand. I read it twice. Then a third time. Then I looked up at the wall of throw blankets in front of me, which were all muted greens and terracottas, and I just stood there for what was probably 90 seconds, but felt like considerably longer. My mother's reply came in while I was still standing there. I'm sure Petra understands. Family comes first. I was family. That was the part that seemed worth noting. I had been family for 32 years. I had also, as of that moment, transferred $31,000 toward an event I was no longer invited to attend. I put my phone in my pocket. I put the blanket back on the shelf. I walked out of the store and sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, watching the lights in the strip mall go about their business. A woman pushed a cart to her SUV. A teenager was sitting on a curb near the entrance, looking at his phone. The Tim Hortons drive-thru had a lineup of 6 cars. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table, which is a small round IKEA table that I've had since my first apartment and have never replaced because it works fine, and I opened my banking app. I scrolled through transactions the way you scroll through old texts, when you're trying to understand how something went wrong slowly, looking for the moment the thing turned. The total, when I actually added it up, was $31,460. That's not a number I'd ever looked at in full before. I had processed each transfer individually, each one with its own tidy justification. Seeing them stacked was different. It looked like a record. It looked like evidence of something I hadn't wanted to name. I opened the group chat again. My mother had sent a follow-up message while I was driving home. Garrett says the venue is really beautiful. I can't wait to see photos. I typed one sentence. Who's covering my contributions to the venue and vendors if I'm not a guest? No response for 11 minutes. Then Garrett, that's a weird way to frame it. We didn't ask you to pay for anything. And there it was, clean and simple, just like that. I didn't respond. I went to my laptop instead. I had every invoice, every transfer confirmation, every email chain in a folder I'd been keeping out of habit. Because I work in payroll and keeping records is what I do. I spent 40 minutes organizing them. Then I sent individual emails to the venue coordinator, the catering company, the photographer, and the florist. Each email was polite, brief, and said the same thing. I was the guarantor on the account and I needed to initiate a cancellation review. The venue coordinator, a very professional woman named Ms. Osei Bonsu, called me the next morning. She walked me through the contract. There was a partial cancellation penalty. I ate it. It was still less than what I would have lost if I'd done nothing. The photographer's contract had a clause I'd signed that allowed me to transfer or cancel with 60 days' notice, which I was just inside of. The catering company required a written cancellation letter, which I drafted that evening and sent that night. The florist called me directly because apparently Garrett had called her first, demanding she ignore my email, at which point she very calmly explained the contract was in my name and there was nothing she could do. I went back to the group chat. I attached the cancellation confirmation from the venue, then the catering acknowledgement, then the photographer's cancellation receipt. I wrote one sentence above them, updated my contributions to reflect my updated guest status. Then I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and made dinner. Pasta with the roasted garlic sauce I make when I don't want to think. I ate alone at my small round table and watched the first episode of a documentary about migratory birds that I'd been meaning to watch for 2 months. I slept better than I had in weeks. The morning messages started at 6:47 a.m. Garrett first, then his fiancée, the first time she'd messaged me directly in 4 years, then my mother in a rapid string that came in over about 4 minutes. Garrett, what did you do? The venue just sent me a cancellation notice. Are you serious right now? His fiancée, I don't know what your problem is, but this is insane. You have no right to do this. That deposit is non-refundable, and we are going to pursue this legally. My mother, across 6 messages, Petra, I need you to call me right now. This is not how we handle things in this family. Your brother is devastated. Sienna is in tears. You need to fix this immediately. This is not what a sister does. Call me. I read all of them. I poured a second coffee. I looked out my kitchen window at the backyard, which in late October is mostly dead grass and the specific gray of Ontario sky that settles in around Thanksgiving and doesn't really leave until April. I called my mother back because she's my mother and I have never been the person who ignores my mother, even when I probably should have started. She answered on the first ring. You need to reverse whatever you did, she said, before I could say anything. I canceled the vendors I was paying for. You're ruining your brother's wedding. I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding. That is not the point, Petra. What is the point? Long pause. The point is that family supports each other even when things are hard. I've been doing that for 4 years. $31,000 worth of it. Is that not support? Another pause. Longer. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into something quieter and harder. Don't make this about money. It's tacky. I want to say something landed in me in that moment, but the truth is it had been building for a long time and this was just the last thing to press on it. Being told that the $31,000 I had quietly handed over was tacky to mention, while being excluded from the event those $31,000 were funding, clarified something I had been working very hard not to see. I love you, Mom, I said. I'll talk to you later. I hung up. Garrett sent 3 more messages that day. His fiancée sent 2. A cousin I'm not particularly close to sent a voice note on behalf of Garrett saying he was really hurt and that I was being vindictive. My mother texted me that evening. I hope you know what you've done to this family. I did not respond to any of them. I went to work. I processed payroll. I ate lunch at my desk. I came home and fed my cat. A 7-year-old orange tabby named something very ordinary that I won't bother mentioning because he is the only uncomplicated relationship in the story, and I refuse to bring him into it. Here's the thing I haven't mentioned yet. I knew something about Garrett's fiancée that I had been sitting on for 3 months, which was roughly how long I'd had a screenshot of a conversation I'd seen entirely by accident. Back in July, Garrett had asked me to help him set up a shared tablet for his apartment, an older device of mine he wanted to use as a kitchen display. I'd logged into my iCloud to download a few things, reset it, and when I went to sign out, I accidentally opened his Messages app, which had synced when I briefly connected it to his Apple account during the setup. I would have closed it immediately except that the thread at the top of his screen was from his fiancée, time-stamped 3 days earlier, and the preview line read, "He'll never find out. Stop worrying." This isn't the first time I've done something like this. I didn't read further. I took a screenshot of just that preview line and the contact name. I signed out immediately. I told myself it wasn't my business. That was July. It was now November, and I'd been uninvited from the wedding I was paying for, and I thought about that screenshot every day. I want to be clear, I did not go looking for that information. I didn't dig through his phone or hire anyone or engineer any situation. I stumbled on something in a moment that lasted less than 10 seconds, and I'd held it privately for 3 months, trying to decide what a decent person does with something like that. I think the reason I hadn't said anything was that I was afraid of being the one who burned everything down. I was always the responsible one, the careful one, the one who thought about consequences. And there was a version of telling him that felt less like protecting him and more like a way to be right. But sitting in my apartment in November, excluded from the event, having just been told that $31,000 was tacky to mention, I made a decision. I called Garrett. He didn't pick up. I texted him, "Call me when you can. There's something I need to show you, not about the money." He called back in 20 minutes. His voice was tight and controlled in the way that meant he was practicing being calm. "I don't want to argue," he said. "I'm not calling to argue," I said. "I need to show you something I found in July that I should have told you then. I'm sorry I didn't. I was trying to figure out the right way, and then everything happened, and I still think you need to know." Silence on the line. "What is it? Can I send it to you directly? Not the group chat, just you." "Fine." I sent him the screenshot, the thread preview, the contact name, the timestamp. 43 seconds went by, which I know because I was watching the clock on my microwave. "Where did you get this?" he said. I explained. The tablet, July, the accidental sync. I told him exactly what I'd seen and exactly when I'd closed it and that I hadn't said anything at the time because I didn't know how. Another long silence. "Why are you sending this now?" "Because you're about to marry her, and because I think you deserve to decide for yourself what it means with all the information available." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then she told me she had a complicated history, that there was someone before me she overlapped with. Okay, I said. She said it was done. Okay. This is from July. Yes. The line was very quiet. I have to go, he said. He hung up. I don't know exactly what happened between them in the hours that followed because I wasn't there for it, and this time, I didn't position myself to be. I wasn't in the parking lot. I didn't send the screenshot to the group chat. I didn't call my mother or the cousin or anyone else. I sent Garrett one more text that evening. I'm sorry this is hard. I'm here if you want to talk. He read it. He didn't respond. What I know about what happened next, I know because my mother called me 4 days later in the kind of voice she uses when she's trying very hard to sound neutral. Garrett had confronted his fiancée. She had apparently confirmed something my mother was vague on the details, either because she didn't know them or because she was editing for my benefit. The engagement had been called off. The Niagara-on-the-Lake venue would not be hosting a wedding in the spring. He's not doing well, my mother said. I know. I've been checking on him. Pause. You have? Every couple of days. He hasn't really wanted to talk, but I've been texting. A longer pause. I didn't know that. I know. My mother was quiet for a moment, which for her is meaningful. She's not a quiet person. I said some things, she started. I know. The money. We don't have to do this right now, I said. Let's just get through the next little while. She exhaled. You're too reasonable sometimes, Petra. It's exhausting. I actually laughed at that, so did she. Garrett called me 11 days later. It was a Sunday afternoon, early December, the first real snowfall of the season. I was at the grocery store when my phone rang, and I stepped out of the produce aisle and stood near the entrance where it's colder but quieter. He didn't apologize for the text in the group chat right away. He talked around it for a little while about how he was doing, about how she had cried and said it had been a mistake, about how he had known something was off but had told himself it was just pre-wedding nerves. He said the word embarrassed a few times, not about what she had done, about the fact that everyone had known before him. I didn't know, I said. I only had one message preview and no context. I could have been wrong about what it meant. You weren't, though. I know, but I could have been. He was quiet. Why didn't you say something in July? Because I didn't want to be the person who blows up your relationship on incomplete information, and then things went the way they went, and I was afraid you'd think I was sending it out of spite. I did think that, he said, for about 4 hours. And then? And then I asked her directly, and she didn't exactly deny it. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't much to say. I put you in a terrible position, he said eventually. The wedding stuff, the money, letting things get to where they got. He stopped. I should have said something when she started pulling back from you. I noticed. I just didn't say anything because it was easier not to. That was actually the part that hit hardest. Not the $31,000, not the group chat message, not even being uninvited. It was the quiet acknowledgement that he had seen it happening and decided it was easier to let me absorb it. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I'm sorry, Petra. I stood near the entrance of the grocery store while the summer cold leaked in through the automatic doors, and someone behind me was trying to navigate a cart around me, and I said the only thing I could honestly say, I know, I'm sorry too. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing much as planned to take some time at home in Sudbury after Christmas, whether Mom's Evesters were still doing the thing they'd been doing since September, whether I thought the Leafs had any real chance this year, which I do not, but I listened to his reasoning anyway. I started therapy in January. Not because I thought I was broken, not even because of Garrett exactly, but because I'd spent the fall sitting with a feeling I didn't have good language for. My therapist asked me, about a month in, to describe what I got from being the reliable one. I said I got to feel needed. She asked if that was the same as feeling loved. I sat with that for a long time. It isn't. I know that now. Not exactly. Feeling needed is its own thing, and it can feel like love for a very long time, especially when you've been in the role since you were young enough to think being useful was your value. But there's a version of being needed that is really just being used, and the gap between those two things is where I'd been living for years without properly naming it. The deposit from the venue came back to me in partial form in late January, not the full amount, but more than I'd expected. The photographer refunded the full deposit with a note saying she hoped things worked out, which was kind. The caterer kept their cancellation fee, which was fair. It was in the contract, and I'd read it and I'd clicked anyway, eyes open. Garrett came to visit in February. He stayed for a weekend, slept on my couch, ate my food, and helped me move a bookshelf I'd been meaning to relocate since the summer. We watched hockey. We ordered Thai food from the place down the street that I've been ordering from for 6 years and that Garrett had never been to, which felt strange given how many years he'd been in the city. We didn't talk about the engagement or the money or the group chat message. On Sunday morning, before he drove back, he made coffee without being asked. He put a mug next to me while I was still half asleep on the couch with my cat on my feet, and he said quietly, "I'm going to pay you back." "You don't have to." "I know, that's why I'm going to." He's been sending transfers every month since March, not large amounts. He's rebuilding too, but something which is more than nothing, and more than the money is the fact that he said it and then did it, which is its own kind of information about who he's choosing to be now. I don't know if what I did was the right thing. I've thought about it a lot and I don't think I'll land on a clean answer. Canceling the vendors was the right call. I know that much. Sitting on that screenshot for 3 months, then sending it when I did, in the way I did, without the group chat theatrics or the parking lot ambush, I think I can live with that, most days. There are moments at 2 in the morning when I wonder if the timing was entirely free of the injury I was carrying that week, and I'm honest enough with myself to say I don't completely know. What I do know is that being someone's safety net and being someone's sister are two different things, and I spent a long time letting the first one substitute for the second. That's not entirely Garrett's doing. Some of it was mine. I kept showing up with a check before anyone asked, and that trained everyone around me to assume I'd keep showing up that way. And I never once said, "This isn't what I want," because I decided somewhere early on that what I wanted wasn't really the point. That's the part I'm still untangling. February in Mississauga is the month where you've had enough of winter, but you're still several weeks away from it being over. The light starts coming back a little, just enough to remind you that the dark part isn't permanent. I've been trying to notice that this year. The light coming back a little at a time. Some things don't resolve the way you want them to. Some things just slowly become something you can carry differently. Not lighter exactly, but better arranged. I'm still learning the arrangement. I'll probably be learning it for a while. But the coffee's mine, the cat's mine, and for the first time in longer than I can track, so is the life I'm waking up to. That's enough for now. It really is. I've thought a lot about the word useful since all of this happened. How long I let it stand in for something else. How many years I confused being needed with being valued, and how quietly those two things can look identical until the moment they don't. What I did wasn't impulsive. That's the part people might get wrong if they only looked at the surface of it. I didn't cancel those vendors in anger, not really. I canceled them because I finally asked myself an honest question. If I had never offered a single dollar, would I still have been on that guest list? And when I sat with that question long enough to actually answer it, I already knew. The answer had been there for years. I'd just been too busy making transfers to look at it directly. There's something I've come to understand about the choices I made, not just in November, but all the years before it. Every time I stepped in before anyone asked, every time I quietly absorbed a cost so that no one else had to feel the discomfort of it, I was making a choice too. I was choosing a version of myself that felt safe, indispensable, low risk, impossible to cut out as long as the checks kept clearing. I told myself it was generosity. Mostly it was fear. Fear that without the usefulness, there wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough on my own, just standing there with nothing to offer but my presence. That's not Garrett's fault entirely. He took what I put in front of him, the way most people will when it's offered without conditions. The fault, if I'm honest, was mine for never once saying this isn't what I want. For treating my own needs like a footnote. What changed wasn't some sudden burst of anger. It was clarity. A slow, cold, very clear-eyed look at what was actually happening. When my mother told me the money was tacky to mention, something in me just went quiet and still and honest. I stopped negotiating with a version of reality that wasn't real. That's the hardest kind of courage, I think. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind that makes a speech in a parking lot. The kind that just stops. That sits down. That says, no, actually, this is what's true and doesn't budge from it. And then the screenshot. I wrestled with that one for months, and I won't pretend the timing was completely free of what I was carrying. But when I sent it to Garrett, I didn't post it publicly. I didn't call my cousins. I gave it directly to the one person who had the right to have it, and I told him the truth about how I'd found it, and I let him decide what to do. That matters to me. How you handle information says something about what you actually believe, not just what you claim to. Garrett is paying me back, a little at a time. My mother called twice just to talk, which she didn't really do before. Something shifted, quietly, in the way a family sometimes has to shift. Not with a ceremony, not with a formal acknowledgement, but with a slight change in how people move around each other. Like everyone recalibrated just a little. I'm still recalibrating too, learning to take up the space I'm in without apologizing for it. Learning that showing up without a checkbook is still showing up. Learning, slowly, that belonging isn't something you can build by being indispensable. You either belong somewhere or you don't. And the sooner you're honest about which is true, the sooner you can stop paying for rooms that were never really yours.